Thank you. Can you guys hear me with the microphone? Oh, good. I was told I can take my mask off, which is a huge treat. However, Katie let me know ahead of time next time, so I wear lipstick. So, but that's okay. No, it feels good. So I will stay up here behind here, and if I have to come and talk to you, I'll just put my mask back on. And if anybody has any concerns, I'm used to wearing a mask, so please just let me know that you prefer me to wear it, and I have absolutely no issues with that. But if I don't hear, I think I can articulate a little better without my mask. So like Katie said, I am one of 26, I think, registered dietitians at Sparrow, and I work in all areas of the hospital. I've worked in the adults, I've worked with the kids. One of my favorite things though is doing like community outreach like this and just being able to talk to people about, being as healthy as they can. So I'm really excited to the part at the end where we can kind of have questions and kind of make sure this was applicable to what your needs are. So if you do have a burning question, I'm certainly not opposed to somebody asking a question that's relevant to what we're talking about. If not, I'm going to be very sensitive on time, and you guys are allowed to remind me. So by 2:45, we will be doing questions. And I have a lot of slides, and you have a lot of handouts. So we may go over some topics that don't need a ton, and we're, just to be sensitive on time, we may go through it a little faster. But I can always give you my email and my phone number, so if you had a question on something too. So the topic today is food and your mood, and it's actually more than that. It's food and your health, and it's the connection between how you feel, what your health is, and what you're eating. So it's pretty important. The topics is going to be the brain and gut connection, a little bit of serotonin. I'm not talking too much. That's the feel-good hormone that's, certain foods like our comfort foods give us. Fats and the fats that are best for our health, fat-soluble vitamins, B vitamins, antioxidants, caffeine, sugar, and food additives. There'll be some other tips, a newer section that I've created on probiotics. I think that's just such a up-and-coming topic. And then the Mind or Mediterranean diet, which this is going to bring it all together on how you can, eat as healthy as you can at home for your brain and general health. So our brain is a metabolically active organ. It's in our mood, our motivation, our performance is all influenced by our diet. And the right foods and their natural neurochemicals really enhance our mental capabilities, how well we focus, what our memory speed is, our reaction time. It helps us stress and even brain aging. So we're going to talk about the right foods for that. I love this diagram that shows how the brain and abdomen influence each other. The brain stem and the abdomen are actually connected by the vagus nerve, and there it is. It was pretty good on this. So you can see that the caudal brain stem and the vagal nerve, they connect, which is so interesting to me. In fact, I was looking at a study recently on body image, and I don't really completely understand how they did it, but they put some sensors on that vagal nerve or the vagus nerve, and the people that had the most reactivity, the people that had their brain and their abdomen, the most electrical currents, or I don't know what they were measuring exactly, had the best body image. And the people that didn't have a great connection between that had more of a distorted body image. So I just thought that was kind of applicable and interesting in how it's so influenced. The hypothalamus in the brain, that's the coordinator of the gut actually. And even before we eat, our body is producing hormones. Leptin is related to your appetite. Before we even start eating, as soon as we start eating and right before, insulin starts taking effect. That's, obviously that's what helps us with controlling our blood sugar. So a lot of connection between it. So that's why what we eat directly affects our brain. And you can see right there that vagus nerve is the connector. Okay, so our brains are 70% fat. And you probably have heard when you're pregnant, they talk about nowadays, like you got to eat omega-3s, you've got to, that's helping to develop the baby's brain and nervous system. So right away we need omega-3s. Omega-3s are really important components of the outer membrane of our brain cells. We have to get the omega-3s through diet. The body cannot make it. So we're going to talk about a ton of different sources of omega-3s, but the ones that come to mind that are most common is salmon. Sardines have some, even though they have salt. Certain nuts, like walnuts. Tuna has omega-3s. So those are like the main ones. But they're the building blocks of our brain, and they really help with learning and memory and mood, just general mood. You eat more omega-3s, usually we're going to talk about associations with our mood. Of course, and you probably heard too with your heart, they're the anti-inflammatory benefits of it. So they're a polyunsaturated fatty acid, and there's basically 3 types of omega-3s. And this is where my pronunciation gets really bad. We've got the alpha-linolenic, the ALA, and that source is more of like the plant sources of omega-3s, like flaxseed is one that comes to mind really fast. The eicosapentaenoic acid, that's terrible. That's the best I can do on that one. That is the EPA, and the docosahexaenoic acid, that's the DHA. The EPA and DHA, that's what's going to be in your fish. If I look at, just because there's numbers on it, if I look at a container of fish oil, I don't know if anybody takes that, it's going to be broken up between EPA and DHA, and both of those are excellent for the anti-inflammatory benefits. But that's what you're going to see like on your bottle of fish oil, where the ALA is going to be like in your flax. And converting, your body does prefer the EPA and DHA because it has to convert the ALA into EPA and DHA, and the conversion is not real easy, not 100% converts. But certainly eating flax is still better than not eating any omega-3s. So omega-3s are anti-inflammatory. People that eat more DHA had lesser risk of Alzheimer's and dementia. And then it can lessen your cognitive decline with age, and it can increase the release of serotonin and help your mood. So we talked about the serotonin at the hormone serotonin. It's a neurotransmitter. I'm sorry, serotonin at the beginning, but how it just helps with your mood. So this slide is just really talking about studies that they've looked at with omega-3 fatty acids. So the bottom line is they did a decent study on 915 people who ate 1 seafood meal per week. And these people had less memory loss and less loss of processing speed than the other group that didn't eat at least 1 seafood meal per week. So omega-3s help with improving your brain function, and it's especially in people that are already experiencing mild cognitive impairment. And it can help prevent, it can help if you're actively having issues. So it's pretty powerful if you can do that, eat the fish. This little study on middle-aged adults talked about using ALA, and I did say that the conversion isn't as great, but this group had a slower decline in global cognitive or brain function decline, and improved memory when they did the ALA. So both work, the flaxseed and the fish. I know that all of us are, maybe not all of us are, thinking about ADHD, but we certainly hear kids, and I know there's adults in this world that have that, so I just thought it was relevant in society. And that they gave kids between 60 and 1,300 milligrams of EPA or DHA. It was combined a day, and that's a very huge range. But the parent-rated emotional stability and oppositional behaviors was improved with the kids that took the supplement. So omega-3s it's very interesting what they can do. We think of them with inflammation, so I think improving lungs, improving heart, but it's obviously improving behavior too. So this is just another little thing on mood in case you have some kids in your life that you're concerned about. And these kids took a lot more. They took almost 2 grams of omega-3s, and their memory, flexible thinking, and self-control was improved. I think we all, depression is something that's so prevalent in our society that a 2016 study, or actually it was an analysis of 2016, but they looked at 26 studies, said that, found that a 17% lower risk of depression with people who had the highest or higher fish intake. And I would consider higher fish intake to be, 1 to 2 meals a week of fish. Okay, so we're just talking about, continuing to talk about the importance of having omega-3s and omega-6 fatty acids in our body. We didn't talk about omega-6s. They're important too. They're more of the other polyunsaturated like safflower oil and corn oil, and we want to have the ratio. We don't want to have, we do eat more omega-6, but we need to have some omega-3 to balance it. So you need both in your diet. So that's what it's talking about, the proper level of having a balance of those, and how they're important for the brain, and that the deficiency is going to cause mood disorders, cognitive declines, and maybe increased risk of mental illnesses or Alzheimer's. So let's make this practical now. What are the dietary sources? Fish, some plants, and nut oils. So the fish is salmon, mackerel, halibut, sardines, tuna, and herring. When I'm instructing people in the hospital, I'm always like, salmon and tuna, because those are just readily available fish, but certainly there's more than that. We talked about the ALA, and that's the plant source ones. So that's canola, flaxseed, some soy, pumpkin seeds, walnuts, and walnut oil. And walnut oil is something I need to remember more about using. It's, I have used it for some recipes, but it's a great source of omega-3s. Has anybody used walnut oil? There was a recipe in the demonstration kitchen that, like a salad dressing that they used, and it was really good. So it's going to be on my radar to get a little more walnut oil in. So now we're just talking about general monounsaturated fats. We were talking about the polyunsaturated, and that was the omega-6s and the omega-3s, the omega-3s being our fish. Now we're just talking about other monounsaturated, and when I think of this one, I think olives, so just the olive oil. And this helps with your blood flow, which helps with your heart and decreases inflammation, helps with your brain, and also helps with maintaining your weight. It might lower your blood pressure too, which can improve your brain function. So really not all fats, but really choosing the monounsaturated and then the omega-6s are both wonderful. So monounsaturated is going to be available in your nuts, your avocados, canola, olive oil, a little bit in safflower and sunflower. Now I was saying that they're omega-6s, they're both. They're like, if you look at like a percent of them, they got a combination. Peanut oil and butter, and sesame oil. So this was a long-term study of 4,800 people in China, and they ate 2 teaspoons of nuts a day, and it was mostly peanuts. And the study went on for, like 15 years or something. And they had increased cognitive function of 60% higher compared to those that didn't eat nuts. So eat your peanuts if you aren't allergic. So we talked about all these good fats. We're going to focus on we're going to eat our fish if we can. We're going to choose our oils as olive, canola, or maybe walnut oil, maybe some peanut oil. What fats should we avoid? And so we're going to, this is going to be nothing new to you guys, but the saturated fats, which is your animal fats, should be limited, and then the trans fat. And honestly, they've done so many, they've changed the fats so much lately that I don't see the word trans fat on labels anymore. Has anybody seen that? Do you remember they used to? But anytime you see the word hydrogenated fat, there's traces of trans fat with it. So avoid the hydrogenated, and then the animal, have leaner animals, so animal fat. So, things you already know. Trim your steaks, use lower fat cheeses, that type of thing. because that can impair your blood flow, which affects your brain, which affects your heart, and it's certainly not going to help your mood. There's a little theory, I'm just going to not go too crazy with this, but I'm using coconut oil and seeing if it helped with your brain. And the reason they thought about it is our brain likes glucose or sugar for energy. But as you get older, your body can't utilize the glucose as well. And this is especially true, they found in people that have Alzheimer's or Parkinson's. So the body was using, ketones. It was breaking down fat. So they thought that an alternative fuel might be to have people eat coconut oil because there's medium chain triglycerides in it. So they did a small study of just 44 people, and they gave them an ounce plus a third or something. So just a little over an ounce of coconut oil every day for 3 weeks. And these people also followed a Mediterranean diet. So they ate the fish and the vegetables, and they were eating really good anyway. So they did both. And they had improvement in their orientation and language construction areas. They had better issue. They had improvement in memory. So this group did well, but the bottom line was it was really small. It was just 44 people. And we want to be careful with coconut oil because it is considered a saturated fat, even though it is plant-based. So I call it my moderation fat. I don't think it's not as saturated as butter, but it's certainly not an olive oil. It's kind of like in between. But it's something to consider if you're seeing things on brain and MCT oil and stuff like that. That's kind of where they're getting it from is that study that was done. Okay, so now we're going to get into micronutrients, which are just our vitamins, our minerals, antioxidants, just small things. So a couple, fat-soluble vitamins are vitamin A, D, E, and K. We'll start with vitamin D, which is one of my favorite topics in the whole world. I was just called them Family Today, trying to increase, got a blood value from a patient and working with them on increasing that vitamin D, because I truly believe in the mood effect of vitamin D. I have seen it. I have seen patients who come in, and teenagers and adults who have come in and just not feeling sluggish, having brain fog, and checking vitamin D level, it being very, very low, supplementing them, and then having a big improvement. So why do we like vitamin D? It can increase levels of serotonin, which affects our mood. It may improve depression. I believe it does. We want to eat at least 600 units a day, and it's hard to do. There's some in milks and some in fish and some in fortified in foods. There's a link between low levels of vitamin D and Alzheimer's and depression in adults. So we want to, definitely have vitamin D. There's research on autism spectrum disorder and kids that were supplemented with vitamin D, and that there was definitely improvement in their behavior and their abilities with adequate vitamin D too. So there's a million studies you can talk about and how vitamin D is wonderful. So bottom line, if I were you, everybody should know their vitamin D level, and probably most of us need to take supplements. So know where you're at and ask your doctor every single year to do that. Okay, so then vitamin E is another fat-soluble vitamin, and we get most of that can help with memory, and most of that comes from like our nuts. So walnuts, hazelnut, Brazil nuts, almonds, cashews, our seeds. So lots of opportunity for vitamin E. I do warn people about going over with supplements. You don't ever want to go over 400. It might even be less than that. But you just be careful with supplements because it's a fat-soluble vitamin. So you might have heard the thing, well, I take too many vitamins, I'll just pee it out. Well, yeah, most of them you do, like the B vitamins for the most part. But like the fat-soluble ones, they can store in your body more. So taking high doses of D, usually you're fine. But, E and stuff, you want to be careful of that. So I'm going to move on to the water-soluble vitamins. Get through these. We'll start with we will start with B12. And B12 is really associated with helping with your memory. So it's in, you may hear that people who are vegetarian and vegan have a little more trouble with B12 because it is in a lot of animal products, but it's also in fortified cereals. So if I do have vegetarians and vegans, I do a lot of time recommend they take a multivitamin or a dose of B12, separate dose of B12. But generally we get enough in animal products and cereals. So it can prevent brain shrinkage and it can save on your, again, I think B12 and memory are very associated. Folate too, this is related to preventing depression and mental sluggishness. It can be in spinach, dark green leafy vegetables, fortified grains. I just read another timely article about people who had folate deficiency and how they were at higher risk of Alzheimer's. So another reason to have enough folate in our body and to make sure we're eating the foods that have it in it. And some of us may need a multivitamin that has the just a little bit of it in there to help with that. Okay. So B6, this is again can make you feel good because of it producing serotonin. This can help with preventing depression and preventing cognitive decline. Again, being a little bit careful with supplements on B6, going over 100 milligrams a day can cause, has been reported, not for everybody, to cause some nerve damage. So sometimes physicians balance that with some magnesium, but don't just be careful of too much. If you do, I believe the amount of B6 you need in a day is like 1 or 2 milligrams. So if you're taking a supplement, usually it's like 10, 20. It's not going to be super high, but if you are taking one of those huge ones, you want to make sure that you're just not going over 100 without talking to your doctor about it or monitoring your health. So let's get our B6 from food if we can. Cereals, chicken and turkey, tuna, salmon, beef liver, potatoes, lentils, chickpeas, and some in bananas. Is it working out okay that you guys are following along with Katie made these beautiful slides. One thing I love doing these talks is Katie makes these beautiful outlines and she just does it herself, so she's amazing. So I hope that if I go over something kind of fast that you feel like you've got it in writing, okay? Because I get excited about this topic and I've only got like 15 more minutes till questions and I just want to make sure I can get to, choline. It's really great with memory and reaction time, and the most prevalent source is eggs. So I'm going to keep moving a little bit just so we don't have to run through or miss questions. There's some in wheat, germ, and beans, but a lot, I think eggs and choline. And the interesting thing is that your body can make choline and you can eat choline. And as you get older, especially women, they don't produce enough naturally in our bodies. So it is something that, as a woman, we need to, eat from food. Antioxidants, what an important subject. So when I think antioxidants, I'm thinking fruits and vegetables. I'm thinking the colors, the selenium, turmeric, dark chocolate. These are all the things I'm thinking. They aid in antioxidants are important with memory, how you perform. To me, they help you prevent you from, getting sick, cell damage, so oxidative damage, the environment. We get a lot of stress in our environment from pollution and lots of different things. And this is what helps our body fight off some of that stuff. So dark berries, dark berries and dark green leafy vegetables, the bright orange vegetables, nuts have some. Blueberries are super potent and wonderful, may be able to fight Alzheimer's and Parkinson's. Selenium, I just love talking about selenium. I think Brazil nuts, that's what I think of. I think Brazil nuts are wonderful for selenium. They're good for thyroid health. They're just good for a lot of different things, but they're an antioxidant that can help with your mood and your ability to think. So it's in fish and other things. It's dependent on the soil, so it does vary a little bit depending on where you live, but just think your Brazil nuts. Turmeric. I always think turmeric and I think staining my counter, but I love turmeric. It's wonderful. what did I recently make that I put turmeric in? Because I find it sometimes hard to find recipes that had it. Oh, I made like a marinated chicken, like a Mediterranean type one, and
Sprinkle that in your like a tuna salad too.
ooh,
I
it's
use it.
that's a great. She said sprinkle it in your tuna salad. It's got that pretty yellow. So yeah, you can definitely use it. It's traditional in a lot of Indian dishes, but it's an antioxidant and it helps with memory, and there's a lower prevalence of Alzheimer's in India. Maybe that was the reason. So incorporate it a little bit more because it's super good for us. Dark chocolate is tasty. Most people think so. It's an acquired taste. I didn't like it as a child, but it's another, in moderation, it's a very potent antioxidant. It can help your mood. Chocolate helps my mood, for sure. But you want to make sure that the percent of the cocoa is high. If it, the ones, it's hard to eat in my opinion, it's hard to eat a 90%, but anything like 60 and over is great percent. I'm not going to get into this too much, but caffeine has got to be a moderation thing with mood, because it can kind of perk us up in the morning, but the half-life of caffeine is like 5 hours and maybe longer for other people. So, you're drinking coffee at 12 and it's still half in you at 5 and you want to go to bed at 9, it can be tricky. So moderation when it comes to coffee, you guys know all this. Calories and sugar, we want, again, moderation. Less than 10% of our calories should come from sugar, because white sugar, not natural sugars and fruits, can increase inflammation in our body. And we're talking today about decreasing inflammation, so we don't want to overdo the white sugars. I want to move on and talk about the probiotics, because I think we could talk all day about benefits of probiotics. We definitely think gut, right, with probiotics. Probiotics are so important. Like a lot of people choose to be on them after antibiotics, but they're just finding they can help with so much more than just gut symptoms. Obviously, it's connected, our brain and our gut. So, an unbalance of gut microbes has been associated with behavioral and neurophysical deficits. So, gut dysbiosis is dietary and influenced by the environment. There's overgrowth of some of the pathogens. Some people talk about that leaky gut, and then that can cause inflammation in our whole body. And then that can lead to your brain, not functioning as well with all that. And people that ate the Mediterranean diets and vegetarian tend to have a reduction in those bad pathogens of the gut. People that supplemented with probiotics over a month reported less anger, hostility, anxiety, depression, and it's new, but definitely benefits of it. So these are specific strains. There's millions of strains. So if you buy a probiotic, you're gonna see there's billions of strains in one capsule. So it's hard to choose. What am I looking for? Am I looking for a lactobacillus? That might be a great one. Am I having problems with constipation? Maybe I want bifidobacterium. So there's just so much to look at, and I think the verdict's still out on the kind. So we're going to kind of focus on food, but I will say that Lactobacillus casei can increase mood if they have symptoms of depression, and lower anxiety in patients that had chronic fatigue syndrome. Bifidobacterium, that's when I was talking about that I'm more familiar with like constipation and stuff, can also help with anxiety. And in the hospital, people that were in the hospital and given this, it decreased their anxiety scores. But every article I'm looking at is saying, we need more research in this area. But it's super interesting. So it's not gonna hurt you to eat the probiotic foods. So yogurts are gonna have, you wanna look for a yogurt that says active cultures. Have you guys know kefir, right? You've heard of kefir, cultured milk? It's that picture on the right over there. There's other brands of it, but that's great to drink as a smoothie or to add to smoothies. Sauerkraut, super salty, but another fermented food. Miso soup, if that's your thing. Kimchi. So lots of options. I believe even like sour cream and cottage cheese have very small amounts of fermenting in them too. So yeah, so that's it on the probiotics. It's just a reminder to kind of incorporate that in your diet, and it can influence the gut-brain connection. This is nothing new to you guys. It's just talking about, eating regularly and, you're having, your blood sugar being more stable because your body knows when you're going to feed it next, can be really helpful with your mood. Exercise is really good for your brain, which is going to affect your mood. And then getting the best sleep schedule you can is obviously healthy for you too. I think we talked about the breakfast already, so just the bottom line is try not to skip it, because usually if you skip breakfast, you overeat later on in the day, and make sure you're choosing, fiber foods, perhaps probiotic foods for breakfast, like your yogurt. That would be a good source of protein just to kind of keep your blood sugar under best control. You guys know about exercise and the goal of 30 minutes at least a day. So just about sleep, and we kind of already talked about that. I only want to get into the Mediterranean mind diets. So really beneficial diets to help the mood would be the Mediterranean, the mind diet, and then the traditional DASH diet that's been kind of talked about for a while. The DASH diet, I'll just briefly talk about that. That's the one that is aimed more, it's more of like the a lot of cardiologists like this diet because it's been proven to help with blood pressure. It's high in calcium and potassium and magnesium. It's got a lot of fruits and vegetables, whole grains. It's got quite a bit of lean dairy too, or low-fat dairy. But we're going to start talking about the Mediterranean diet. So you guys have all heard the Mediterranean diet. Lots of olive oil, which is the monounsaturated fats, nuts, fruits, green leafy vegetables, fish, whole grains, beans. Really, it's very limited in like animal products. It's a very plant-based diet. People on this diet had lower rates of depression. The foods are often high in B12 and folate. Maybe that was it. Less blood vessel damage to the brain, reduced risk of developing mild cognitive impairment, and it can reduce the risk of Alzheimer's. To get some, these are just some options if you wanted to. You can look up Oldways, OLDWAYS. They have a lot of booklets and things. I'm trying to remember. We've handed them out before. Yeah, we have. Did you have them, Katie, before a long time?
Yeah, I think it was one of the programs inside the demonstration kitchen.
Yeah. So anyway, we've had them, but this is something you can definitely look up on your own if you're looking for recipes in the Mediterranean diet. But really, it's vegetable-based, using the olive oils. Now, the Mind diet is very similar to the Mediterranean diet. It's kind of a combination of, I believe it's a Mediterranean, and then it's got some, must be a little bit of I think it's a DASH diet too with it. But it's really focuses on green leafy vegetables, nuts, berries, whole grains, and fish. It limits red meats, saturated fats like butter and margarine and cheese, and sweets and sugars. The best thing about the Mind diet is the studies that they've done that people that, it was related to Alzheimer's, so it's gotten a lot of attention on Alzheimer's, and it was a reduction of 53% reduction in getting Alzheimer's if they followed the diet closely. And I'm going to talk about what a day looks like because I think it's very confusing right now, like how you're supposed to eat it. And people that followed the Mind diet moderately, they still had a 35% decrease. So it's very influential in these studies for Alzheimer's. It's high in vitamin E, which is an antioxidant, and DHA. It has lots of berries. We talked about antioxidants. So yeah, it incorporates elements of the Mediterranean and the DASH. And the DASH I talked about when I was starting this section, and that was the one that was created for like the lowering blood pressure. So it has the higher potassium and the calcium, and very like low fat based. So I'm going to focus on the Mind because I think having that 53% reduction in Alzheimer's is pretty impactful and powerful. So this is what you would eat on the Mind diet, like a typical day. This is not, you can obviously buy your own books and do your own recipes, but you would eat 3 servings of whole grains. So you may wake up and have your oatmeal, and then have, a sandwich at, lunch, and then have at dinner another grain product that you wanted. You would have at least a salad every day and another vegetable. So, you know, a salad at lunch and broccoli at dinner. You can have a glass of red wine if you'd like. It's pretty. Well, you don't have to have it, but that's on this diet. It is allowed. You can have you can have nuts are a popular snack. Blueberries and strawberries every day. Chicken or fish every day. Beans at least every other day. Olive oil is your primary cooking oil, and you're going to limit butter, fried foods, and pastries and stuff, and sugary type things. So the U.S. News ranked the diet, and in overall best diet, it was a tie for number 4, fourth place. So just some rankings and how people thought about it. So it's pretty popular. So that is actually, I went through this stuff pretty fast. So that is all I have for my, yeah, we got 20 minutes. That's the end of my organized talk, but I'm hoping we can have some discussions on what you guys are thinking about with your brain and your food and cooking or anything you want to talk about. Yes?